This video is sponsored by songwriter Andrew Gray. When and if a pop song features a key change, it's almost always in the final third of the song. This is generally done to inject some extra energy and variation into the song, but If I Fell by the Beatles is almost the exact opposite of this, featuring its key change in the first 18 seconds of the song. The song starts out in D flat major, but after only 8 bars we're now in D major, where we'll be staying for the rest of the song.
If I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me understand? 'Cause I've been in love before and I found that love was more than just holding hands. If I gave my heart...
This passage isn't just clever because of the key change. These 8 bars are potentially one of the most harmonically interesting introductions that the Beatles ever wrote. We begin with E flat minor 7. Now, in the context of the intro's key, D flat major, this is the 2 chord. But when we hear this E flat minor 7 at the very opening of the song, our ears haven't got the wider context yet, so we're not necessarily hearing it as a 2 chord, we're just hearing it for what it is, an E flat minor 7 chord with a little bit of melody above. Perhaps our ears will start latching on to E flat minor as the key center, but really in the course of one bar, we're not really going to have time to hear a key center, we're just going to hear the chord for what it is. Now, the next chord actually ramps up this ambiguity. This D major chord here is really quite striking because D major doesn't belong with E flat minor. There is no major or minor key where D major and E flat minor fit together diatonically. This means that no matter how your ears are currently perceiving the key, D major is going to sound chromatic, it's going to not belong in the context of the song.
If I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me?
But like I said before, we are in D flat major here. It might take our ears a couple bars to work that out, but by the time we land on this D flat major chord here, that's going to be quite clear now. So with that in mind, the progression we've had so far is 2, flat 2, and then 1.
If I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me?
This flat 2 chord, the D major chord, is the really interesting one. A major chord built on the flattened second degree of the scale like this is sometimes referred to as a Neapolitan chord. But Neapolitan may not be the best way to describe this chord here, because Neapolitan chords generally function to take you to the dominant chord, the 5, like this. But the flattened second chord in If I Fell isn't doing this. Instead, it's functioning to resolve us down to the tonic. And there is actually a term to describe this as well. It's called a tritone substitution. A tritone substitution is a resolution down from the flat 2 chord to the 1 chord, the tonic. It's quite common in jazz music, but you can find it in pop music as well. Usually, if we wanted to resolve to the root, we would use a perfect cadence, a move from the chord 5 to the chord 1. But the tritone substitution is a jazzier, spicier alternative to this traditional and predictable perfect cadence. It's called a tritone substitution because that's literally what's happening. If you take a normal perfect cadence like this one and substitute the 5th chord for the chord that's a tritone away from it, you wind up with the flat 2nd chord. So the D chord, the tritone sub, has resolved us down to D flat major. And then we get B flat minor, which is the 6th chord, a fairly familiar, predictable chord within the key. So we've had 2, flat 2, 1, and then 6. So that's the first 4 bars of the song. In the next 4 bars, it seems like the progression has started to repeat again. We get the same E flat minor 7 again with the same melody, and the same again for the D.
Been in love before and I found that love was more than...
But this is the important bit, right here where we're expecting to resolve back to the root D flat major. Instead, we get a 2-5-1 perfect cadence, modulating us to a brand new key, D major.
Found that love was more than just holding hands. If I gave my heart to...
In all of the years that I've been listening to this song, I never previously realised that there's even a key change in there. It wasn't until I sat down to learn the song that I realised what was going on. This key change is so well woven into the fabric of the harmony that it's hidden in plain sight. The one bar which I think really helps to hide this key change is the D major chord here. The previous 4 bars have established D as part of the harmonic fabric of the song, even though it doesn't belong in the key. So when we hear the D chord here, it isn't particularly unexpected or jarring. We trust this D major chord to resolve down to the root like it did last time. But this time around, the D major chord betrays our trust, and instead of resolving down like it should to the D flat, our rightful root, it takes the opportunity to pivot away to its own 2 chord, E minor 7, establishing a 2-5-1 cadence that winds up installing D major as the new key center. To really hear the change that this key change is making to If I Fell, this is what the song would sound like if it didn't have a key change and instead stayed in D flat major for the entire tune.
If I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me understand? 'Cause I've been in love before and I found that love was more than just holding hands. If I gave my heart to you, I must be sure from the very...
To me, this key change isn't actually making a massive fundamental change to how the song sounds. I think the song would have been just as successful and just as nice without it. But it does add an extra level of intrigue and excitement into this opening section. These 8 bars though are actually a great example of how the exact same chord can sound drastically different in a different context. Here the D major chord sounded chromatic and tense, wanting to resolve down to D flat major. But here, now that we've modulated to D major, the D chord sounds fully at rest and diatonic. It's the exact same 3 notes here, but we're hearing it differently because it's functioning differently within the context of the music. If I Fell is a perfect example of the Beatles' fantastic sense of harmony. In its first 8 bars, it's already demonstrated a harmonic sophistication beyond most of the songs that were out at the time, and most of the songs that are out today.
If I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me understand? 'Cause I've been in love before, and I found that love was more than just holding hands. If I give my heart to you.
So if you can think of a pop song that changes key earlier than the first 18 seconds or the first 8 bars, then definitely put it in the comments because I'd love to hear about that. And a massive, massive thank you to today's sponsor, who is Andrew Gray. Andrew Gray is a songwriter from Austin, Texas, and his music sort of blends hip-hop with rock in a way that, to me, sounds much like the Gorillaz. Andrew's influences include bands like Tool, Radiohead, 9 Inch Nails, and Kanye West. And if you're interested in listening to his music, you can find it on most streaming platforms, including Spotify. And thank you as always to my amazing supporters over on Patreon, with a special thank you going to Andre Sainz-Diaja, Andrew Brown, Andy Deacon, Austin Barrett, Bob McKinstry, Chris Cabal, Christopher Ryan, Kieran Bennon, Daniel Long, Daryl, Darren Harvey, David Defindifer, David M. Berry, Esben Hansen, Eyes, F.D. Hodor, George Taylor, Golf House, James Keogh, J.A. Kockensparger, Joe Vasson, Jonas Soderstrom, Jonathan Banks, Justin Vigor, Meg Fellows, Melody Composer Squared, Nancy Gillard, Nicholas, Orlando Bernard, Paul Muller, Paul Paisel, Peter Dunphy, Roger Clay, Schnitzelcraft, Summer Ray, T. Newport, Tim Beaker, and Vladimir Kodakov.
You write very good songs. Don't you?
Thank you. Thank you.
How do you write songs?
Well, you know, we just depend. Sometimes we write them on old pianos and anything that's lying around, you know, old tramps.
Then again, there's no formula, because he can come up with one day completely finished. We still say we both wrote it though.